My brother said we should head back. He said it casually, the way you say it when you don't want to admit you mean it. And we all agreed a little too quickly. Here's the part I think about most. We turned around and started back the way we came. Same trail, same blue blazes. And it was shorter going back. Much shorter. We'd walked something like 40 minutes in. We were back at the junction with the loop trail in what couldn't have been more than 15. Now, I know how that sounds. I know that going back always feels faster. You're not stopping to look at things, you know the way. You're walking with purpose. I have told myself that exact thing many times. Going back always feels faster. But it wasn't a feeling. Dev had started a timer on his phone when we left the chairs, because by then we were all a little spooked and wanted to know how long it took. 15 minutes and some seconds. We had walked at the same pace, slightly faster on the way out, if anything, because the light had still been good. It should not have been 15 minutes. And the blazes. On the way out, I'd noticed how oddly they were spaced, long gaps, then clusters. On the way back, walking the same trail in the other direction, they were spaced evenly, regular. One every 30 yards or so, like a properly marked trail. I kept looking for the clusters. They weren't there. I didn't say anything, because what would I even say? The marks moved? That's not a sentence you say out loud to people you have to share a car with. We got back to the cabin before dark. We made dinner, we drank, we laughed about it. By the next morning, it had already turned into a funny story. The spooky chairs, the haunted mug. We packed up and drove home, and that was that. Except for one thing, and this is the thing I genuinely can't put anywhere. A few weeks later, Dev texted me a photo. He'd been going through pictures from the trip to send around. It was one he'd taken at the little lake, the pond, while we were eating. Just the water, the fallen tree, nice afternoon light. He texted it because he wanted to point out that it was a good shot. In the background, across the water, in the dark space between two trees, there's a shape. It's not clear. It's the kind of thing where if you weren't looking for it, you'd never see it. You'd read it as a stump, a trick of the shadows, a smudge. It's pale, and it's vertical, and it's roughly where a person would be if a person were standing in the trees across the pond, watching the four of us eat our sandwiches. This was before we found the second trail. This was the loop. The normal trail, the one on the map, in the early afternoon. Before we'd seen the blazes, or the chairs, or any of it. Whatever that shape is, it was already there, across the water, on the part of the day I'd remembered as completely ordinary. I've zoomed in on it more times than I'd like to admit. It never resolves into anything. It never resolves into nothing, either. That's the problem with it. A clear answer would have let me put it down. I never went back. My brother suggested it once, a year or two later, half joking, and I changed the subject. I looked up the rental a while ago, and it isn't listed anymore. The owner must have stopped renting it out. I don't know what happened to the trail, or the chairs, or whether anyone else ever walked back there and found them dry. What stays with me isn't fear, exactly. It's more like the feeling of having walked through someone's living room while they were in it, and only realizing afterward. The sense that the woods weren't empty, that the trail wasn't a shortcut somebody made for themselves, that it was kept open and marked, and that the chairs were set out and the mug was placed there, not as a leftover from someone's life, but as part of something ongoing, something that had a rhythm to it, something we walked into the middle of and then walked back out of, faster than we should have been able to, like the distance itself had decided it was done with us. I think we were let go. That's the only way I've ever been able to phrase it that feels true. Not that we escaped. That we were let go. I still don't know what was sitting in those chairs. I don't know if anything was. But I think about the mug sometimes, sitting there dry, on its dry ring, in the middle of a soaked forest. And I think about how a mug only gets a ring like that from being set down and lifted. Set down and lifted, in the same spot, over and over for a long, long time. And then I stopped thinking about it, because that's as far as the thought goes before it stops being something I want to follow. I don't tell this one often. Not because it's dramatic. It isn't really. It's the kind of thing that sounds like nothing when you say it out loud, and that's exactly why it stayed with me. The story you can explain stops bothering you. This one I could never quite finish explaining, so it just kept going in the back of my head, year after year. This was October, maybe 11 years ago now. My brother had rented a cabin a few hours north for a long weekend. Him, me, his girlfriend at the time, and a friend of ours named Dev. The cabin wasn't anything special. One of those mid-price places you book online where the photos are slightly nicer than the reality. Pine walls, a wood stove that smoked too much, a kitchen with mismatched mugs. There was a laminated binder on the counter with the Wi-Fi password and a list of local restaurants, half of which had closed. It rained the first day, so we mostly stayed in. The second day cleared up cold and bright, and we decided to walk off the cabin food. There was supposed to be a marked trail nearby. The binder mentioned it, and there was a little folded paper map the owner had left, photocopied so many times the lines were soft and gray. The trail it showed was a simple loop. Out along a ridge, down to a small lake, back up through the trees. A couple of hours, the binder said. Easy. We found the trailhead exactly where the map put it, about a 5-minute walk up the gravel drive. There was even a wooden post, weathered gray, with a faded yellow blaze painted on it. So far, so normal. The loop was fine. Pretty even. The lake was smaller than I expected, more of a pond with a fallen tree across one end. We ate the sandwiches we'd packed sitting on a flat rock, and Dev took photos of the water with his phone. On the way back up, that's when we saw the other trail. It branched off to the right, maybe 2/3 of the way back to the cabin. And I want to be precise about this, because the precision is the part that bothers me. It wasn't a deer path. It wasn't a place where the brush happened to be thin. It was a made trail. The undergrowth was cleared to about shoulder width. The ground was packed and slightly sunken from use, the way a path gets when feet have been pressing it down for a long time. And there was a blaze on a tree at the entrance. Not yellow, like the loop. This one was a kind of pale blue, faded, but deliberate. We stopped and looked at it. My brother checked the photocopied map. There was no second trail on it. Just the loop. He had the route up on his phone too, on one of those hiking apps, and there was nothing there either. Just the loop, drawn in green, and then blank forest, where this path clearly went. Dev made some joke about it being the secret good trail, the one the locals keep off the maps. And honestly, at the time, that explanation felt completely reasonable. Trails get made and unmade all the time. Somebody clears a shortcut, somebody marks it, and it never makes it onto a paper map that's been photocopied since the 90s. That's not strange. That's just how the woods work. I remember actively thinking, this is nothing, this is normal, people are reading too much into it. We decided to follow it a little way, just to see. We had a couple hours of daylight, we figured, and we could always turn back. The first thing I noticed was that it was well kept. Not maintained exactly. There was no signage, no gravel, nothing official. But there were no fallen branches across it, no overgrowth pulling in from the sides. On a real abandoned trail, you're climbing over deadfall within 5 minutes. This one was clear. Clear the way a path is clear when somebody walks it regularly enough to keep it open, but not so often that it gets worn down to dirt. The blue blazes kept appearing. Every so often, on a trunk at about eye level, that same pale blue mark. They were spaced oddly. Sometimes you'd go a long stretch and start to wonder if you'd lost the trail, and then there'd be 3 of them close together, like whoever painted them got nervous about that particular section and wanted to be sure. I noticed that and filed it away as nothing. People mark trails inconsistently. It means nothing. We walked for what felt like 40 minutes. The light was doing that low golden thing it does in the late afternoon, coming sideways through the trees. It was beautiful, genuinely. My brother's girlfriend said something about how we should come back here in summer, and then we came to the chairs. That's the word that's always felt wrong, even now. Chairs. There were 2 of them, set a little ways off the trail in a small clearing. Old wooden kitchen chairs, the kind with the spindled backs, the paint mostly gone. They were facing each other, maybe 4 feet apart. Between them, on the ground, was a flat stone someone had clearly dragged there to serve as a table. And on the stone there was a coffee mug, ceramik, sitting upright. We stood at the edge of the clearing and nobody said anything for a second, because the natural explanation was right there. Somebody lives back here. Or used to, and this was a little spot they'd set up. A place to sit, that's all. People do that. I told myself that. But the chairs were dry. It had poured rain the entire first day. Everything in those woods was still damp. The bark was dark with it. The ground was soft. The fallen leaves were stuck together in wet clumps. The chairs were dry. The seats, the rungs, the mug. Bone dry, like they'd been brought out after the rain stopped, which would have been sometime that morning. Dev picked up the mug. I remember telling him not to, and I don't even know why I said it. He turned it over. There was nothing remarkable about it. It was just a mug. He set it back down, and I noticed he set it back exactly where it had been, on the same dry ring on the stone, and I think that bothered me more than anything. That there was a dry ring on the stone where the mug had been sitting, which meant the mug had been sitting there for a while in a place where everything else was wet,